Verse 17. The concentration called right knowledge is that which is followed by reasoning, discrimination, bliss, and unqualified egoism. Samadhi is divided into two varieties. One is called the samprajñāta and the other the asamprajñāta. In the samprajñāta samadhi come all the powers of controlling nature. It is of four varieties. The first variety is called the savitarka, when the mind meditates upon an object again and again by isolating it from other objects. There are two sorts of objects for meditation in the 25 categories of the Samkhyas. 1. The 24 insentient categories of nature, and 2. The one sentient Purusha. This part of yoga is based entirely on Samkhya philosophy, about which I have already told you. As you will remember, egoism and will and mind have a common basis, the chitta or the mind stuff, out of which they are all manufactured. The mind stuff takes in the forces of nature and projects them as thought. There must be something, again, where both force and matter are one. This is called avyakta, the unmanifested state of nature before creation, and to which, after the end of a cycle, the whole of nature returns, to come out again after another period. Beyond that is the Purusha, the essence of intelligence. Knowledge is power, and as soon as we begin to know a thing, we get power over it. So also when the mind begins to meditate on the different elements, it gains power over them. That sort of meditation, where the external gross elements are the objects, is called savitarka. Vitarka means question. Savitarka, with question, questioning the elements, as it were, that they may give their truths and their powers to the man who meditates upon them. There is no liberation in getting powers. It is a worldly search after enjoyments, and there is no enjoyment in this life. All search for enjoyment is vain. This is the old, old lesson which man finds so hard to learn. When he does learn it, he gets out of the universe and becomes free. The possession of what are called occult powers is only intensifying the world, and in the end, intensifying suffering. Though as a scientist, Patanjali is bound to point out the possibilities of this science, he never misses an opportunity to warn us against these powers. Again, in the very same meditation, when one struggles to take the elements out of time and space and think of them as they are, it is called nirvitarka, without question. When the meditation goes a step higher and takes the tanmatras as its object and thinks of them as in time and space, it is called savichara, with discrimination. And when, in the same meditation, one eliminates time and space and thinks of the fine elements as they are, it is called nirvichara, without discrimination. The next step is when the elements are given up, both gross and fine, and the object of meditation is the interior organ, the thinking organ. When the thinking organ is thought of as bereft of the qualities of activity and dullness, it is then called Sānanda, the blissful samadhi. When the mind itself is the object of meditation, when meditation becomes very ripe and concentrated, when all ideas of the gross and fine materials are given up, when the sattva state only of the ego remains, but differentiated from all other objects, it is called Sasmita Samadhi. The man who has attained to this has attained to what is called in the Vedas bereft of body. He can think of himself as without his gross body, but he will have to think of himself as with a fine body. Those that in this state get merged in nature without attaining the goal are called Prakritilayas, but those who do not stop even there reach the goal, which is freedom. Verse 18. There is another samadhi which is attained by the constant practice of cessation of all mental activity, in which the chitta retains only the unmanifested impressions. This is the perfect, superconscious, asamprajñāta samadhi, the state which gives us freedom. The first state does not give us freedom, does not liberate the soul. A man may attain to all powers and yet fall again. There is no safeguard until the soul goes beyond nature. It is very difficult to do so, although the method seems easy. The method is to meditate on the mind itself, and whenever thought comes, to strike it down, allowing no thought to come into the mind, thus making it an entire vacuum. When we can really do this, that very moment we shall attain liberation. When persons without training and preparation try to make their minds vacant, they are likely to succeed only in covering themselves with tamas, the material of ignorance, which makes the mind dull and stupid, and leads them to think that they are making a vacuum of the mind. To be able to really do that is to manifest the greatest strength, the highest control. When this state, asamprajñāta, superconsciousness, is reached, the samadhi becomes seedless. What is meant by that? In a concentration where there is consciousness, where the mind succeeds only in quelling the waves in the chitta and holding them down, the waves remain in the form of tendencies. These tendencies, or seeds, become waves again when the time comes. But when you have destroyed all these tendencies, almost destroyed the mind, then the samadhi becomes seedless. There are no more seeds in the mind out of which to manufacture again and again this plant of life, this ceaseless round of birth and death. You may ask, what state would that be in which there is no mind, there is no knowledge? What we call knowledge is a lower state than the one beyond knowledge. You must always bear in mind that the extremes look very much alike. If a very low vibration of ether is taken as darkness, an intermediate state is light, very high vibration will be darkness again. Similarly, ignorance is the lowest state, knowledge is the middle state, and beyond knowledge is the highest state, the two extremes of which seem the same. Knowledge itself is a manufactured something, a combination. It is not reality. What is the result of constant practice of this higher concentration? All old tendencies of restlessness and dullness will be destroyed, as well as the tendencies of goodness too. The case is similar to that of the chemicals used to take the dirt and alloy off gold. When the ore is smelted down, the dross is burnt along with the chemicals. So this constant controlling power will stop the previous bad tendencies, and eventually the good ones also. Those good and evil tendencies will suppress each other, leaving alone the soul in its own splendor, untrammeled by either good or bad, the omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Then the man will know that he had neither birth nor death, nor need for heaven or earth. He will know that he neither came nor went. It was nature which was moving, and that movement was reflected upon the soul. The form of the light reflected by the glass upon the wall moves, and the wall foolishly thinks it is moving. So with all of us. It is the chitta, the mind stuff, constantly moving, making itself into various forms, and we think that we are these various forms. All these delusions will vanish. When that free soul will command, not pray or beg, but command, then whatever it desires will be immediately fulfilled. Whatever it wants, it will be able to do. According to the Samkhya philosophy, there is no God. It says that there can be no God of this universe, because if there were one, he must be a soul, and a soul must be either bound or free. How can the soul that is bound by nature, or controlled by nature, create? It is itself a slave. On the other hand, why should the soul that is free create and manipulate all these things? It has no desires, so it cannot have any need to create. Secondly, it says the theory of God is an unnecessary one. Nature explains all. What is the use of any God? But Kapila teaches that there are many souls who, though nearly attaining perfection, fall short because they cannot perfectly renounce all powers. Their minds for a time merge in nature to re-emerge as its masters. Such gods there are. We shall all become such gods, and, according to the Samkhyas, the God spoken of in the Vedas really means one of these free souls. Beyond them, there is not an eternally free and blessed creator of the universe. On the other hand, the yogis say, not so, there is a God. There is one soul, separate from all other souls, and he is the eternal master of all creation, the ever-free, the teacher of all teachers. The yogis admit that those whom the Samkhyas call the merged in nature also exist. They are yogis who have fallen short of perfection, and though for a time debarred from attaining the goal, remain as rulers of part of the universe. Verse 19. This samadhi, when not followed by extreme non-attachment, becomes the cause of the re-manifestation of the gods and of those that become merged in nature. The gods in the Indian systems of philosophy represent certain high offices which are filled successively by various souls, but none of them is perfect. Verse 20. To others, this samadhi comes through faith, energy, memory, concentration, and discrimination of the real. These are they who do not want the position of gods or even that of rulers of cycles. They attain to liberation. Verses 21 through 24. Success is speedy for the extremely energetic. The success of yogis differs according as the means they adopt are mild, medium, or intense, or by devotion to Ishvara. Ishvara, the supreme ruler, is a special Purusha, or soul, untouched by misery, actions, their results, and desires. We must again remember that the Patanjali Yoga philosophy is based upon the Samkhya philosophy. Only in the latter there is no place for God, while with the yogis God has a place. The yogis, however, do not mention many ideas about God, such as creating. God as the creator of the universe is not meant by the Ishvara of the yogis. According to the Vedas, Ishvara is the creator of the universe. Because it is harmonious, it must be the manifestation of one will. The yogis want to establish a God, but they arrive at him in a peculiar fashion of their own. They say, verse 25, in him becomes infinite that all-knowingness which in others is only a germ. The mind must always travel between two extremes. You can think of limited space, but that very idea gives you also unlimited space. Close your eyes and think of a little space. At the same time that you perceive the little circle, you have a circle round it of unlimited dimensions. It's the same with time. try to think of a second. You will have, with the same act of perception, to think of time which is unlimited. So with knowledge. Knowledge is only a germ in man, but you'll have to think of infinite knowledge around it, so that the very constitution of our mind shows us that there is unlimited knowledge, and the yogis call that unlimited knowledge God. Verse 26. He is the teacher of even the ancient teachers, being not limited by time. It is true that all knowledge is within ourselves, but this has to be called forth by another knowledge. Although the capacity to know is inside us, it must be called out, and that calling out of knowledge can only be done, a yogi maintains, through another knowledge. Dead, insentient matter never calls out knowledge. It is the action of knowledge that brings out knowledge. Knowing beings must be with us to call forth what is in us, so these teachers were always necessary. The world was never without them, and no knowledge can come without them. God is the teacher of all teachers, because these teachers, however great they may have been, gods or angels, were all bound and limited by time, while God is not. There are two peculiar deductions of the yogis. The first is that in thinking of the limited, the mind must think of the unlimited, and that if one part of that perception is true, so also must the other be, for the reason that their value as perceptions of the mind is equal. The very fact that man has a little knowledge shows that God has unlimited knowledge. If I'm to take one, why not the other? Reason forces me to take both or reject both. If I believe that there is a man with a little knowledge, I must also admit that there is someone behind him with unlimited knowledge. The second deduction is that no knowledge can come without a teacher. It is true, as the modern philosophers say, that there is something in man which evolves out of him. All knowledge is in man, but certain environments are necessary to call it out. We cannot find any knowledge without teachers. If there are men teachers, God teachers, or angel teachers, they are all limited. Who was the teacher before them? We are forced to admit, as a last conclusion, one teacher who is not limited by time, and that one teacher of infinite knowledge, without beginning or end, is called God. Verse 27. His manifesting word is Om. Every idea that you have in the mind has a counterpart in a word. The word and the thought are inseparable. The external part of one and the same thing is what we call word, and the internal part is what we call thought. No man can, by analysis, separate thought from word. The idea that language was created by men, certain men sitting together and deciding upon words, has been proved to be wrong. So long as man has existed, there have been words and language. What is the connection between an idea and a word? Although we see that there must always be a word with a thought, it is not necessary that the same thought requires the same word. The thought may be the same in 20 different countries, yet the language is different. We must have a word to express each thought, but these words need not necessarily have the same sound. Sounds will vary in different nations. Our commentator says, although the relation between thought and word is perfectly natural, yet it does not mean a rigid connection between one sound and one idea. These sounds vary, yet the relation between the sounds and the thoughts is a natural one. The connection between thoughts and sounds is good only if there be a real connection between the thing signified and the symbol. Until then, that symbol will never come into general use. A symbol is the manifester of the thing signified, and if the thing signified has already an existence, and if, by experience, we know that the symbol has expressed that thing many times, then we are sure that there is a real relation between them. Even if the things are not present, there will be thousands who will know them by their symbols. There must be a natural connection between the symbol and the thing signified. Then, when that symbol is pronounced, it recalls the thing signified. The commentator says, the manifesting word of God is Om. Why does he emphasize this word? There are hundreds of words for God. One thought is connected with 1,000 words. The idea God is connected with hundreds of words, and each one stands as a symbol for God. Very good. But there must be a generalization among all these words, some substratum, some common ground of all these symbols, and that which is the common symbol will be the best and will really represent them all. In making a sound, we use the larynx and the palate as a sounding board. Is there any material sound of which all other sounds must be manifestations, one which is the most natural sound? Om is such a sound, the basis of all sounds. The first letter, A, is the root sound, the key, pronounced without touching any part of the tongue or palate. M represents the last sound in the series, being produced by the closed lips, and the U rolls from the very root to the end of the sounding board of the mouth. Thus, Om represents the whole phenomena of sound producing. As such, it must be the natural symbol, the matrix of all the various sounds. It denotes the whole range and possibility of all the words that can be made. Apart from these speculations, we see that around this word Om are centered all the different religious ideas in India. All the various religious ideas of the Vedas have gathered themselves round this word Om. What is that to do with America and England or any other country? Simply this, that the word has been retained at every stage of religious growth in India, and it has been manipulated to mean all the various ideas about God. Monists, dualists, monodualists, separatists, and even atheists take up this Om. Om has become the one symbol for the religious aspiration of the vast majority of human beings. Take, for instance, the English word God. It covers only a limited function, and if you go beyond it, you have to add adjectives to make it personal, or impersonal, or absolute God. So with the words for God in every other language, their signification is very small. This word, Om, however, has around it all the various significances. As such, it should be accepted by everyone. Verse 28. The repetition of this Om and meditating on its meaning is the way. Why should there be repetition? We have not forgotten the theory of samskaras, that the sum total of impressions lives in the mind. They become more and more latent but remain there, and as soon as they get the right stimulus, they come out. Molecular vibration never ceases. When this universe is destroyed, all the massive vibrations disappear. The sun, moon, stars, and earth melt down, but the vibrations remain in the atoms. Each atom performs the same function as the big worlds do. So even when the vibrations of the chitta, or mind stuff, subside, its molecular vibrations go on, and when they get the impulse, come out again. We can now understand what is meant by repetition. It is the greatest stimulus that can be given to the spiritual samskaras. One moment of company with the holy makes a ship to cross this ocean of life. Such is the power of association. So this repetition of Om and thinking of its meaning is keeping good company in your own mind. Study and then meditate on what you have studied. Thus, light will come to you. The self will become manifest. But one must think of Om and of its meaning too. Avoid evil company, because the scars of old wounds are in you, and evil company is just the thing that is necessary to call them out. In the same way, we are told that good company will call out the good impressions that are in us, but which have become latent. There is nothing holier in the world than to keep good company, because the good impressions will then tend to come to the surface. Verse 29. From that is gained the knowledge of introspection and the destruction of obstacles. The first manifestation of the repetition and thinking of Om is that the introspective power will manifest more and more, and all the mental and physical obstacles will begin to vanish. What are the obstacles to the yogi? Verse 30. Disease, mental laziness, doubt, lack of enthusiasm, lethargy, clinging to sense enjoyments, false perception, non-attaining concentration, and falling away from the state when obtained are the obstructing distractions. Disease. This body is the boat which will carry us to the other shore of the ocean of life. It must be taken care of. Unhealthy persons cannot be yogis. Mental laziness makes us lose all lively interest in the subject, without which there will neither be the will nor the energy to practice. Doubts will arise in the mind about the truth of the science, however strong one's intellectual conviction may be, until certain peculiar psychic experiences come, as hearing or seeing at a distance, etc. These glimpses strengthen the mind and make the student persevere. Falling away from the state when obtained. Some days or weeks when you are practicing, the mind will be calm and easily concentrated, and you will find yourself progressing fast. All of a sudden the progress will stop one day, and you'll find yourself, as it were, stranded. Persevere. All progress proceeds by such rise and fall. Verse 31. Grief, mental distress, tremor of the body, and irregular breathing accompany non-retention of concentration. Concentration will bring perfect repose to mind and body every time it is practiced. When the practice has been misdirected or not enough controlled, these disturbances come. Repetition of Om and self-surrender to the Lord will strengthen the mind and bring fresh energy. The nervous shakings will come to almost everyone. Do not mind them at all, but keep on practicing. Practice will cure them and make the seat firm. Verse 32. To remedy this, the practice of one subject should be made. Making the mind take the form of one object for some time will destroy these obstacles. This is general advice. In the following aphorisms, it will be expanded and particularized. As one practice cannot suit everyone, various methods will be advanced, and everyone, by actual experience, will find out that which helps him most. Verse 33. Friendship, mercy, gladness, and indifference, being thought of in regard to subjects happy, unhappy, good, and evil respectively, pacify the citta. We must have these four sorts of ideas. We must have friendship for all. We must be merciful towards those that are in misery. When people are happy, we ought to be happy, and to the wicked we must be indifferent. So with all subjects that come before us. If the subject is a good one, we shall feel friendly towards it. If the subject of thought is one that's miserable, we must be merciful towards it. If it is good, we must be glad. If it is evil, we must be indifferent. These attitudes of the mind towards the different subjects that come before it will make the mind peaceful. Most of our difficulties in our daily lives come from being unable to hold our minds in this way. For instance, if a man does evil to us, instantly we want to react evil, and every reaction of evil shows that we are not able to hold the chitta or mind stuff down. It comes out in waves towards the object, and we lose our power. Every reaction in the form of hatred or evil is so much loss to the mind, and every evil thought or deed of hatred or any thought of reaction, if it is controlled, will be laid in our favor. It is not that we lose by thus restraining ourselves. We are gaining infinitely more than we suspect. Each time we suppress hatred or a feeling of anger, it is so much good energy stored up in our favor. That piece of energy will be converted into the higher powers.